All right, so we're going to move on. Let's talk about choosing the best fit college. And so we're going to talk about the sequence in which colleges view your application. This is not commonly known information. This is not something that people talk about, but they should, because the reality is that you can only be strategic when you have information. Knowledge is power. So the knowledge that if this is not a test optional school, the first thing they're going to see is your test score. And this is a painful reality. We didn't make the world, we just live in it. So the reality is your test score is the first thing that is going to be seen if you are going to a school where the test is required. And, if you struggle with your test prep, if you have anxiety, if you just are opposed to going through that process, please do take a look at fairtest.org. You can see there a list. Many hundreds of schools have moved to test optional or test flexible, where they will allow different types of tests to take the place of those others. So the test scores will be the very first thing they're going to see. And from there, it goes to transcript. So Jeff, this is what you were talking about, wasn't it? This is where the transcript, the broad overview of the transcript, not just the number. Why don't we speak a little bit about that weighted and unweighted?
Yeah, so what you've got, and even if, I often hear sometimes students who don't go to my particular school, but will be concerned because they'll say, my school doesn't weight my GPA. And they're very concerned about this. But what you have to understand is that a college is looking at your transcript. And so what they're going to see is they're going to be able to tell whether or not you've challenged yourself based on what was available to you at your school. So even if your school doesn't use a weighted GPA, and I should explain just in case we have some listeners out there who don't understand the idea of a weighted GPA. A weighted GPA is taking an honors course, an AP course, or an IB course and giving it an extra weight in the GPA. So for instance, if you took an AP course, just to make it simple, and you got an A in that course, an A is typically worth 4 GPA points. If you weighted, it might be worth 5 GPA points. And so colleges will allow you to weight that. But even if they don't, they're still going to use the strength of your curriculum. And what you want is that, obviously the best case scenario is that you started strong, you continued to challenge yourself throughout high school, and you stayed strong. But they want you to be pushing yourself. And, that age-old question, Pamela, is that what's better to take a college prep or a regular course and get an A, or take an AP course and get a B? Now, to me, I think that if you are getting a B in a course, you are in the right spot. And if you're getting a B in something and you stop taking that AP course just to be able to get an A, you've made yourself inherently less interesting, because you've sent the very clear message that the grade at the end is much more important to you than the process and the path that you're on by challenging yourself. So I think the idea is that if you find yourself asking that question, I think that's the wrong question. You have to start with the idea is that am I interested in the class? Do I want to push myself in this class? And then if you're getting that A or that B in that class, you're in the right spot. If you're getting a C in your honors class, then it's probably time maybe to take a step back and think about whether you're in the right spot. As well with the transcript, schools are going to be able to look for trends, right? So let's say that you've had most schools, when they're looking at your transcript, if you had a down semester, let's say the spring of 10th grade was a tough year, but that's the only hard semester, then expect for a college to look for something else in your application to explain what happened during that semester. Because what they want to know is that is this a trend, or is this just an aberration? Is this just a blip on your transcript? And so you want to make sure that you talk about that. And then they also are going to look for themes, the idea of congruence of a parent's strengths and weaknesses within your intended major. So oftentimes, high school students will talk about what it is that they want to do or what they want to study or what they'd like to be, but you don't see any kind of connection between the coursework that you're choosing or even the activities that you decide to be involved in. So that common narrative is going to be very important. And you can see all of those things in a transcript. So pay very close attention and be careful not to just simplify that down to one number, just down to your GPA. Be very careful about saying, even when you're describing myself, I'm a 27 and a 3.7, because you are so much more than that. And that can be seen in your transcript.
Absolutely. And the essays are another big piece of this. You can see here in the sequence that essays is the fourth thing that they would see. And the essays are where, remember that, like when you think about the Common App, you'll have your primary 650 word essay that you'll be writing, but you will also have a lot of supplemental essays in most cases. And those essays give you an opportunity to answer questions that they didn't even know to ask. So if you need to explain or to put a frame around, the fact that your family moved, or a parent was, diagnosed with an illness, or who knows what happened that you went through, as long as it's honest and you're communicating from a place of transparency, showing that you have resilience, but that you, as a human being, went through an experience, and how you worked through that, and what are the specific strategies that you employed to bring yourself back on track, which presumably you were able to do. Teacher recommendations, extracurricular activities. I think that the difficult thing to note here, everyone, is that, your student can be an awesome, highly recommended student who wrote beautiful essays. They can be an Eagle Scout who has helped to solve a major problem in your community. And the truth is, those pieces of information are so far down this list that without the academic mindset, in order to secure the merit aid that we've talked about, it's still going to be a struggle to get access to some of these more competitive schools. So keep that in mind. And we're so excited to be able to say that our students have gained admission to an average of 9 colleges for every 11 applications they have submitted. Our average SAT score increase is 170 to 270 points, 4 to 7 points on an ACT. What that means is your student can now confidently apply for a higher tier of college and qualify for, free tuition, thanks to that merit aid. We're ready for some questions and answers. I see you've got a whole bunch of them piling up there.
They're coming in fast and furious here. So the first question comes from Sandra. And the question is, my daughter has minimal opportunities to take honors or AP courses in the fall at her high school. How can we help her? How can we help increase her grade point average?
I'll tell you a little secret that a lot of people don't know. There is something called a dual transcript submission. And what that means is, without you having to move your student from a school where they presumably have friends, you are entitled to submit an application that has transcripts from other schools. A very popular option is online AP coursework. My team here in the Los Angeles area helps to oversee that for many, many students. And it gives them I've had students end up with a 4.8 weighted GPA. And a lot of that was because they were doing supplemental work online. So again, your high school may say, we don't allow 10th graders to do AP, or we don't think your student should do honors. That doesn't mean your student can't do it. It just means that you go outside of the school, you still have them complete that work, you show that beautiful, solid performance, and that transcript gets submitted to the university alongside. They will average that together into that GPA as they consider your student's application. Second question, let's see where else we are inspiring ideas in the minds of these parents.
Okay, absolutely. Nicole asks, what's a good ACT or SAT score?
Perfect is good, but that's hard to get. So, national average ACT is about a 21. National average SAT is usually right around 1120. It varies from, session to session. I will say that most competitive schools, you're looking for at least a 27 to 29 on that ACT, and over 1300 when you can on the SAT. So that means that you've got, a 6-point gap or so that you're trying to fill if it's an ACT student. Not all students should be doing the ACT. A lot of students do better on the SAT, but knowing what a good score is, it's not about creating the anxiety in the student. The real question is, how can we make sure that we're giving individual support that helps them improve their comprehension? We don't just want them to get into college. We want them to thrive once they're there. What do you think when you were working on the other side of the desk, Jeff, good scores, did you have a particular threshold that you were aware of that you had to meet?
No, we tried not to. We tried not to have particular thresholds because, to be completely honest, is that anytime that you're making a student aware of some kind of threshold that you're working with, then you run the risk of discouraging them from applying. And colleges don't want to do anything to discourage you from applying. It's the lifeblood of the university. So to me, what you want to do when you're looking is that you want to take your list of schools that you're aspiring to, and you want to make sure that if you want to be highly competitive, then you want to be in the top 25% of their applicant pool. Each class, and to answer your question, Pamela, when we would go through and look at applications and test scores, each class would develop a little bit differently. And so it was always a moving target in terms of what a good score was. So to me, I encourage students and families to look at that middle 50% to see if you're going to be competitive, to look at that top 25% of test scores for each school to kind of get a sense of where you stand. And that'll give you a sense of kind of where you fall in the landscape of the places that you're applying.
Anyone, if you have enough money, you can write applications to, every Ivy League school, even if you have a 2.0 GPA, but you're probably throwing your money away.
Probably,
so,
yeah.
It's about strategy once again. Okay, very, very good. Okay, so let's move on. Next question.
Amy asks, should upper middle class families bother filling out the FAFSA since they won't get much aid anyway?
Oh my goodness. Amy. Yes, you must fill out the FAFSA. Everybody fill out the FAFSA. You would be amazed at how much money some of the families that I have worked with over my 20 years in this industry have coming in every single year, and they still qualify for aid. But if you don't ask, you don't get. Everybody should be filling out that FAFSA.
Completely agree, Pamela. I don't have anything to add to that. I completely agree.
Okay, great. We move on to a question from Beth, who asks, I'm confused about the difference between weighted and unweighted GPA. Could you please review that?
Yeah, we were talking about that before, Beth. And really what this comes down to is a strategy where you want your student to take a reasonable number of honors or advanced placement or international baccalaureate classes to demonstrate what we were calling rigor. And it doesn't mean that more is always better. I love what Jeff was saying. This is about being able to weave a narrative thread throughout the application. So the way the student describes who they are in their essays to the school needs to be in harmony and in a conversation, if you will, with what are the courses that were taken, how do those grades present themselves, and what is the likelihood? Listen, if a student has C's or D's, heaven forbid, in chemistry and math courses, they probably should not be a doctor, right? We don't want our doctors to struggle but they may be a brilliant creative writer, and they should head directly into a liberal arts school and begin writing novels so that we can all enjoy them. So there's no right or wrong in terms of which courses, except as really is relevant to that student and who they are. I definitely believe that even schools that are saying that they're not looking at a weighted GPA, they are looking at rigor. So do consider that 1, 2, 3, 4 rule that I mentioned earlier. By the third year of high school in that junior year, we should see a trend of at least 3 courses, and it could be 2 honors and 1 AP. But please try to, if you're going for a competitive school, show that kind of willingness to go that extra mile.
This question comes from David. And David asks, what types of colleges would my son likely receive more merit aid from? A public or a private university?
Oh my gosh, private. Listen, here's where we got to talk about sticker price. So many parents make the mistake of saying, okay, honey, we have financial challenges, and frankly, who doesn't? It's a very typical thing in this country that parents are overwhelmed by that. And they look and they say, oh, look, the state university is $15,000 or $20,000 a year less than that private university. Oh, honey, I don't want to get your hopes up. Don't apply to the private university. So here's the big mistake, the big takeaway. Private universities, if you go back and think about what we said in this webinar, institutional aid. If your student doesn't even apply, they may not realize that they could end up paying less than the cost of a state school to go to one of the most elite private schools in the country. If that's the right fit for them, and it may not be, but if that's the right fit for them, what a shame if an uninformed parent discourages them from even trying on the basis of something as frankly unimportant as money. When we all get to the end of our lives, we think about our kids. We think about the contributions we've made in this world. As a mom, I want my students to have the best opportunities to create a meaningful life. And college is a vehicle to help that happen. And I just know that other parents feel that same way. So let's not allow money to be the distraction.
I think it's really important too to make sure that you're looking and understanding that private schools are typically have the largest endowments, and endowments are going to be directly linked to how much aid is given. So you can use that when you're, as a pragmatic way as a predictor of what kind of aid you're going to receive.
And that's really true. And it brings to mind, we didn't really talk in this webinar about early decision or early action. We didn't talk about score choice or super score for the testing. There are so many things that parents need to know, that teens need to know. And it's a really important thing for parents to have as much, clarity around this as possible.